Hello, I want to do a video about my journey with astrology because, well, two reasons. Firstly, I live on the east coast of Australia and we are currently facing a pretty hectic cyclone bearing down on all of us. And instead of just sitting online and clicking refresh on the news websites for the latest dooms forecast, I thought I might do something more creative and productive instead. So that is reason number one. But the other reason I wanted to make this is because I was thinking about it today and I realized I actually can't remember at all how or why I got into astrology as an adult. Like, I can't remember the trigger event. And that's really weird for me. Normally, I remember everything. I remember the beginning stages of falling in love with learning about astrology, but I don't remember how or why I picked it up. And that's really strange because astrology went on to become a really, really big part of my life. It's such an amazing tool, and I love being able to give it to people because they suddenly realize that they have all of this preordained permission to actually be who they really are. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Let's go back to the very beginning and I'll tell you about my very first memory of astrology. I remember really clearly being 8 or 9 years old when I was still in primary school. And I remember sitting with my little group of friends that I had at the time who were in my grade. So they were also, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old as well. And we were tucked away on the school oval, which was this huge sports field where all the kids used to play contact sports at lunch behind the teacher's back. And my friends and I were kind of tucked away behind this little clump of trees and we were talking about astrology. And I remember, even though I barely knew anything about it, speaking with such authority and telling people which star signs went with which other star signs, like compatibility astrology, which is not something I practice now. But at the time, as a 9 or 10-year-old, I felt very convinced that I truly knew what was up. And then astrology pretty much leaves my life for maybe 2 decades from that point onwards. It didn't really come back into my life. And this is what I was saying before. I can't really remember how I suddenly became obsessed with astrology, which is really, really weird, but something must have happened in my late 20s because around COVID, I guess it was COVID. I don't know. I can't remember what happened. I can't remember at all how I got back into it, like if someone said something or if I read a book or I saw it mentioned in a podcast. And that's really unusual for me. When it comes to my passions, I retain information particularly well. So I find this a very strange thing that I really can't remember how astrology came back into my life, but it did. And it came back in with a vengeance. And so on my journey to becoming a professional astrologer, I just could not get enough. I was working a full-time job, a pretty busy full-time job at the time, but every spare second I had, even sometimes at work with my headphones in, I was consuming content about astrology. I just couldn't get enough, and everything I consumed just made me more and more curious and energized. It was just this mad passion. And the other thing I noticed was I'm not really good at super prescriptive things like math, for example. Once there's a really particular process for doing something, I tend to lose interest. I don't enjoy rote learning. And when you're learning astrology, there's so much technical foundation that goes into it. And yet I was just absorbing and retaining this information so fast. And that was very unusual for me too. It was almost like I was remembering astrology rather than learning it for the first time. And there was probably a 12-month period where all I did was just study and read and learn about astrology. And I really wish everyone had a passion that they felt as passionate about as I do about astrology, because it really is something that fills me with a sense of awe, because it shouldn't work, right? It shouldn't make sense. And yet the birth chart is this incredible, I hate the word hack, but the birth chart is just this incredible hack for self-understanding and self-mastery. Because astrology is such a rich, storied tradition that is basically about the study of the self, you suddenly, when you get into astrology, have this incredibly rich language for understanding who you are, but also understanding other people. And that is such an asset. And it's so interesting that these synchronicities of the planets being in certain places in the sky at the moment you were born are able to serve as indicators of the themes that you wanted to explore in this lifetime and the things that happen to you, the sorts of journeys that you go on, the kinds of relationships that you get into, particularly in early life. It's just the most mystical, mysterious thing to suddenly feel connected to the universe. Yeah, that's been my journey with astrology. I'm now happily going to start doing readings again for people if that's something that they're interested in. But yeah, I'd really love to remember what it was that made me want to get into astrology in my late 20s, because it was literally like night and day. It was not there one day and then it was all I could think about the next. And I'd really like to know what happened. It's such a strange memory block. Anyway, thank you for listening. I have another video coming out shortly on Dochi, which hopefully you will enjoy. I love her. Reading her chart was super fun. She's such a Leo. And I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.